Welcome to the Kitsap Publishing Deep Dive podcast with myself, Jack Bennett, and Emily Waters. Join us as we explore books, current events, history, politics, health, and more. Let's dive in.
Ever picture yourself just walking right into the Met? No lines or crowds, and definitely no entrance fee.
Yeah.
Well, that was the reality for a young James Howard Kunstler back in 1960s New York City.
Wow.
And that's what we're diving into today, his memoir. But not just to reminisce about, well, a completely different world, really. It's more about what his coming-of-age story, reveals about navigating those honestly kind of turbulent early adulthood years. I mean, isn't that something that we all can relate to?
And what's so interesting to me is thinking about how much the backdrop of 1960s New York City, especially compared to the city we know today, how much that shaped his journey. Can you imagine a city that's pulsing with this totally different energy? Like a fading post-war boom, anxieties kind of simmering beneath the surface, and then you've got the counterculture movement that's just starting to challenge, the old order. It's just fascinating to think about.
Oh, it was a city of contrasts, that's for sure. I mean, on the one hand, you've got Kunstler talking about spending his lunch break just like wandering through the Met for free.
Can you imagine?
I know. This detail, I don't know why, but it really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Like, it made me think about how access to cultural landmarks, even something as simple as an entrance fee, can, shape our experiences and what we're exposed to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you have this almost casual acceptance of risk that you just wouldn't see today, at least not in the same way. This wasn't some sanitized, tourist brochure version of the city. Kunstler talks about routinely party crashing, even as a teenager. He would follow random groups of people into their buildings, up elevators, just right into the heart of the action. It's incredible.
It's like a crash course in navigating social dynamics.
Exactly.
But it's a level of, I don't know, like trust or maybe just naivete that seems almost unfathomable today. But it does make you think about, like, the social fabric of that time. It wasn't all, peace, love, and free museum admissions, though. This excerpt definitely doesn't shy away from the grittier aspects of the city either, which I appreciated.
Exactly. This wasn't just a time of social change, but one of, uncertainty, even fear. I mean, remember, the anxieties of that era, the Cold War, the threat of nuclear annihilation, it was very real, very present in people's minds.
It's true, and I think this excerpt really captures that sense of a world that's kind of teetering on the brink of something. Like, anything is possible.
Absolutely.
And it reminded me of that part in the memoir where Kunstler talks about forging ID cards as a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't some hardened criminal.
Right.
He was just a young guy trying to find his way, and he used his artistic skills to navigate this world where the lines were a lot more blurred.
And that's the key point here. The environment that we're in, whether it's, a city that's bustling like New York or a suburb that's quiet, it shapes our choices, our anxieties, and ultimately the paths that we take.
That's a really good point.
It makes you wonder how different our lives would be if we were all dropped into, totally different settings during those really formative years,
It's true. It's like a giant social experiment.
Yeah.
Speaking of paths, let's talk about Kunstler's own journey into adulthood, which, as we see in this memoir, was definitely not a straight line.
Not at all.
You can tell that he's really wrestling with the weight of these expectations, both his own and, like, the expectations of the world around him. And I give him credit. This excerpt doesn't hold back on the rawness and the confusion of that experience.
It's something a lot of people can relate to, even if they haven't lived in a place like 1960s New York, right?
Yeah.
Just those feelings of being lost, not sure where you fit in the world. Those are universal, and they transcend time and place.
Yeah, they really do.
And it's kind of interesting, isn't it, how, like, in those moments when you feel the most lost, that's often when these unexpected opportunities pop up. Kunstler kind of stumbles into theater, almost by accident, it sounds like, but it ends up giving him this sense of structure and purpose that he'd been, looking for.
Right.
And that detail really stuck with me because it shows how these random encounters, sometimes they can unlock these passions and talents that you didn't even know you had.
It's like that saying, what is it? You find your path by walking it. Although in Kunstler's case, it sounds like there were definitely some stumbles along the way.
Yeah, definitely not a straight line.
No, not at all. The excerpt talks about all these early jobs he had, some that went well, and then some that were just total disasters, like that fake news thing that blew up in his face.
Oh, yeah.
It just reminded me that even those experiences, even the ones you look back on and cringe, They're not a waste.
Not at all.
You learn something from all of them.
Absolutely. Every misstep, every weird detour, it all becomes part of your experience. And for Kunstler, it seems like those early failures, if anything, they made him more self-aware.
Right, exactly.
Like he realized that taking responsibility for your actions, even the messy ones, that's actually what sets you free.
It's like you got to own your story, even the chapters you wish you could edit out, right?
Okay.
But, he wasn't totally on his own in all this. There's this part in the memoir where this guy, Bob Denning, a friend of his mom's, kind of becomes his mentor, even though it seems like he didn't really want to at first.
Interesting.
And that really stood out to me because, I don't know, it just shows the power of mentorship. You never know where it's going to come from.
That's true. And you know what I think is interesting about mentorship? It's less about having all the answers and more about asking the right questions. It's about giving someone space to bounce ideas around, get a different perspective.
Yeah.
Empowering them to trust their own gut.
It's about having someone believe in you, even when you don't.
Yeah.
And beyond mentorship, there's this other theme that comes up a lot in his story, which is this idea of finding your thing, that thing you're passionate about that gives you direction.
For sure.
And for Kunstler, it was theater, which is interesting because it wasn't like this sudden, aha moment where he figured it out. It was more of a gradual realization, slow burn, where he just realized, this is it. This is what makes me feel alive.
I love that. And it's actually a really important takeaway for anyone who's feeling lost right now. Finding your thing doesn't always happen overnight. It's about paying attention to those little things that you're drawn to, the things that make you want to come back for more, even when it's hard.
So true. It's about blocking out all the noise, all the expectations, and focusing on what makes you feel excited, what makes you feel engaged. And you know what else I thought was really cool about this part of the memoir?
What's that?
There's this detail about Kunstler carrying around a list of, get this, everything you like.
Oh, wow. I love that.
I know, right? It's like such a simple but powerful practice, just having this little reminder of the things that bring you joy.
It's like a physical reminder of your values and your passions.
Right. It makes you want to start your own list right now, doesn't it?
Totally.
Okay, maybe we'll save that for later. But seriously, it's a good reminder that even when things are crazy and you're not sure what's next, there are always things to be grateful for. Things that keep us connected to, who we really are.
And that is the perfect transition to the final part of our deep dive today. We've explored 1960s New York, we've dug into Kunstler's struggles and his triumphs, and we've unpacked some really important points about mentorship, finding yourself, and the importance of having that thing that lights you up. But this memoir is more than just one guy's coming-of-age story. It asks a much bigger question. What can we learn from his experiences, and how can we take those lessons and apply them to our own lives, even if our paths are totally different?
It's like we've been, walking in Kunstler's shoes for a bit through this wilder, grittier version of New York and seeing these honestly kind of universal truths about figuring yourself out when you're young. But the thing that really made me think was how the story ends. He's just starting to hit his stride with theater, feeling good. It made me wonder, what does finding your footing really even mean for different people? Is it like a finish line you cross or more like this journey that just keeps going?
That's what I love about stories that stick with you. They bring up more questions than they answer, right?
Yeah.
Like they make you think about your own experiences, what a meaningful life even means. Plus, it reminds us there's no one right way to do this whole life thing, no roadmap, especially not in a world that's always changing.
Right, like everyone's got their own internal compass or something.
Exactly.
And maybe this memoir is like the reminder to check that compass every so often, make sure you're still going in a direction that feels right,
And sometimes checking the compass means letting go of some old baggage, like those stories we tell ourselves, the things we believe that hold us back. When Kunstler finally faces his fear of growing up, of owning his mistakes, that was big. He shows us that sometimes, to grow, you got to rewrite the narratives in your head that aren't working anymore.
It's like we're all works in progress.
Totally.
And you got to be cool with that, with the messiness, surprises, all of it.
Exactly. And this journey, it's not meant to be a solo trip either. All through the memoir, you see how much mentors matter, friends, even random people. They all nudge Kunstler along, help him see things differently. It makes human connection seem so important. Find people who challenge you, who have your back, who inspire you to be your best self,
Makes you wonder, who are those people in our own stories, right? The ones who helped us through our own messes, even in small ways. We probably all have them. This whole deep dive really hits home that even when life's chaotic, especially when you're young and figuring it all out, you're not alone in it.
And that is a great note to end on. We traveled back in time, saw this city about to change forever, and saw how strong the human spirit is, finding meaning, finding your purpose even when the path's unclear. It's a story that tells us to be open to the unknown, to find those connections, and to never forget how powerful our own stories can be, how we can inspire each other.
So well said. And on that note, that's a wrap on this deep dive. We'll be back next time with another fascinating look into.
Oh, well, you'll have to tune in to find out. Until then, keep exploring those amazing stories out there.
Thank you for listening to the Kitsap Publishing Deep Dive Podcast. Emily Waters and I will see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.